Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Presoteric. I am Darren Taylor, and today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is placebo and how that relates to magic. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into it and get to the nitty-gritty. So in this video, I am outlining not just the placebo effect, but a clinical analysis of what placebo is. So you'll be getting both educational material as well as material relating specifically to magic. So I hope you enjoy this video. Without any further ado, let's jump straight into it. The word placebo dates back to the Latin translation of the Bible by St. Jerome, which means I will please. Now, a placebo is a substance or treatment of no intended therapeutic value. Common placebos include inert tablets like sugar pills, inert injections like saline, sham surgery, and various other procedures. In drug testing and medical research, a placebo can be made to resemble an active medication or therapy so that it functions as a control. This is to prevent the recipient or recipients or others from knowing, with their consent, whether a treatment is active or inactive, as expectations about efficiency can influence results. In a clinical trial, any change in the placebo arm is known as the placebo response, and the difference between this and the result of no treatment is the placebo effect, just so that you have that distinction there. Historically, an influential 1955 study entitled The Powerful Placebo established the idea that placebo effects were clinically important and were the result of the brain's role in physical health. But in a 1997 review of the study found no evidence of any placebo effect in any of the studies cited. Subsequent research has found that placebos have no impact on disease. They can only affect the person's perception of their own condition. Improvements that patients experience after being treated with a placebo can also be due to unrelated factors, such as natural recovery from illness. Any measurable placebo effect is termed either objective, lower blood pressure, etc., or subjective, lowered perception of pain. Placebos have no meaningful therapeutic worth, and I want to stress this. They have no effect on disease and can only affect some people's subjective judgment of their symptoms. Sometimes they can make people feel better and sometimes worse, in which case they are coined the term a nocebo. Now, a nocebo, which is Latin for I shall harm, effect is said to occur when negative expectations of the patient regarding a treatment cause the treatment to have a more negative effect than it otherwise would have. For example, when a patient anticipates a side effect of a medication, they can suffer that effect even if the medication is actually an inert substance. The complementary concept of the placebo effect is said to occur when positive expectations improve an outcome. So both the placebo and the nocebo effects are presumably psychogenic, but they can induce measurable changes in the body. One article that reviewed 31 studies on nocebo effects reported a wide range of symptoms that could manifest as nocebo effects, including nausea, stomach pains, itching, bloating, depression, sleep problems, loss of appetite, sexual dysfunction, and severe hypotension. Mental states such as beliefs and expectations can strongly influence the outcome of disease, the experience of pain, and even the success of surgery. As a side note, another negative consequence is that placebos can cause side effects associated with real treatments. Withdrawal symptoms can also occur after a placebo treatment, and this was found, for example, after the discontinuation of the Women's Health Initiative study on hormone replacement therapy for menopause. Women had been on a placebo for an average of 5.7 years. Moderate or severe withdrawal symptoms were reported by 4.8 of those on a placebo, compared to the 21.3% of those on an actual hormone replacement. Because the placebo response is simply the patient's response that cannot be attributed to an investigational intervention, there are multiple possible components of a measured placebo effect. These components have varying relevance, depending on the study design and the types of observations. While there is some evidence that a placebo interventions can alter levels of endocannabinoids or endogenous opioids, the prominent components include expectancy effects, regression to the mean, and flawed research methodologies. A survey in the United States of more than 10,000 physicians came to the result that while 24% of physicians would prescribe a treatment that is a placebo simply because the patient wanted treatment, 58% would not, and for the remaining 18% said that it would depend upon circumstances. Expectation plays a clear role. A placebo presented as a stimulant may trigger an effect on heart rhythm and blood pressure, but when administered as a depressant, the opposite effect. The placebo effect is related greatly on our expectations. In psychology, the two main hypotheses of placebo effect are expectance theory and classic conditioning. In 1985, Irvin Kirsch hypothesized that placebo effects are produced by the self-fulfilling effects of response expectancies, in which the belief that one will feel different leads to the person actually feeling different. According to this theory, the belief that one has received an active treatment can produce the subjective changes thought to be produced by the real treatment itself. Placebos can act similarly through classic conditioning, wherein a placebo and an actual stimulus are used simultaneously until the placebo is then associated with the effect from the actual stimulus. Both conditioning and expectations play a role in the placebo effect and make different kinds of contributions. Conditioning has longer lasting effects and can affect earlier stages of information processing. Those that think that a treatment will work display a stronger placebo effect than those who do not, as an evidence by a study of acupuncture. Additionally, motivations may contribute to the placebo effect. The active goal of an individual changes their somatic experience by altering the detection and interpretation of expectation congruent symptoms, and by changing their behavioral strategies a person pursues. Motivation may link to the meaning through which people experience illness and treatment. Such meaning is derived from the culture in which they live, and which informs them about the nature of illness and how it responds to treatment. Now, I don't want to go into way too much clinical detail with you because I don't want to overshadow the actual point of what I'm trying to get to here, but hopefully that gives you enough information on the placebo effect and placebos and nocebos. In relation to magic, occultism, spirituality, the placebo effect, you could argue, is present in every single ritual, practice, and method of actually practicing magic. And in order for me to explain this, I have to explain somewhat how magic actually works according to psychology. The conscious mind impresses an idea or an intention upon the subconscious mind. And then the subconscious, through association to the different stimuli that they use in the rituals, then unconsciously changes our behavior in order to draw us to the things that we're trying to manifest. Just as a quick example, let's say somebody does a ritual to get more money. They impress that idea upon the subconscious mind, and then they unconsciously change their behavior to then put them in situations that will allow them to make more money or to gain more money. That would be the easiest description that I can give, and the most basic to understand description of how magic actually works. So when you consider all the components that are used in typical ritual, candles, incense, all these things, do those things have intrinsic power or value? Or is it simply the placebo effect at work, that our association to those various things is triggering our minds to have a certain response? Is it the power of our own belief in those things that allows things to manifest? Now, a lot of people look at myself specifically and say, well, no, because you do not believe that they have any intrinsic power. And as such, how could I make those things manifest when I believe that these things are in fact placebo. However, they would be wrong, because my belief in their power does not stem from them being supernatural or in any way mystical. It stems from the fact that I know that through them being a placebo, a mental stimulant, I can unconsciously change my behavior doing something called meta-belief. Now, meta-belief is often found in chaos theory, or rather chaos magic, and meta-beliefs allows you to shift your perspective and your beliefs based on what you're trying to achieve. It's almost like temporarily flicking on a switch to say that I believe these things have intrinsic power in order to trick my mind in a certain state, to unconsciously change my behavior and make those things happen. And so my investment in those stimuli and understanding how they trigger the placebo effect in my mind is what allows me to then achieve those said results through the process that I have described in which magic actually works. And this could apply to every single magician or practicing spiritualists. It would be very difficult to argue that the components used in ritual, which is apparently what causes the manifestation, is anything more than a placebo effect. So while earlier on in this we said that belief is irrelevant, in terms of actual ritual, belief can in fact be very powerful. Now, belief means nothing in terms of science, it is a guess, but convincing yourself that something has an intrinsic power, whether you believe it's the placebo that has the power or not, you can make those things trigger responses in your brain that allows you to then achieve specific results. And I believe this is part of the big formula for magic. And this is what we're all going to cover today. I'm not going to go into too much more detail or into any other psychological phenomena. We will leave that for another day, but I hope that this has given you an idea of what placebo is and how it relates to magic. Now, bear in mind that the placebo effect doesn't just outline how powerful belief is, because as we know that by educating ourselves to the fact that these things are placebo, it does somewhat kind of burst the bubble of belief. But remember that in the setting of this, it's not just a case that you have to believe these things are supernatural in order to work. It is also a fact of convincing your mind that these things will work in a certain way. So whether or not you recognize that the components are a placebo or not, you can still make them work just as effectively. And that's why we believe that understanding this is so important. So I want to thank you for watching. I ask that you hit that like button and subscribe button if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video. Let's redefine the divine. We are Presoteric.